For as long as humans have lived in communities, we have searched for truth. How can we be certain that what another says is honest? This question is as old as language itself. Long before our modern world of machines and laboratories, ancient cultures devised their own remarkable and often harsh methods to separate fact from falsehood. In ancient China, a suspect might be asked to hold a handful of dry rice in their mouth during questioning. The theory was simple, yet elegant. Fear and deception, it was believed, would dry the mouth, making the rice stick. If the rice remained dry, the person was judged to be lying. Elsewhere in the world, the methods were even more dramatic. Consider the trial by ordeal, a practice common in medieval Europe. A person accused of a crime might be forced to plunge their hand into boiling water or carry a red-hot iron for a set distance. The subsequent wound was then bandaged and inspected several days later. If the wound was healing cleanly, divine intervention was presumed, and the individual was declared innocent. These were not tests of physiology, but rather profound tests of faith, where the verdict was left not to human judgment, but to a higher power. These early methods, however crude they may seem to us now, all share a common thread. They are all based on the fundamental idea that the act of lying triggers an involuntary response within the human body. Our ancestors were observing a profound connection between the mind and the body. They were, in their own way, the very first lie detector experts, pioneers in a field that would one day lead to wires, sensors, and the whirring of a modern polygraph machine. The journey from ancient rituals to a machine designed to read our inner thoughts is a fascinating tale of innovation and ambition. It was at the turn of the 20th century that the components of what we now call the polygraph began to assemble. One such inventor, an Italian criminologist named Cesare Lombroso, used a device called a hydrosphygmograph in the late 1800s to measure the blood pressure and pulse of criminal suspects during interrogation. However, the true father of the modern polygraph is widely considered to be John Augustus Larson, a police officer in Berkeley, California, who was also a medical student. In 1921, Larson developed a device that could continuously and simultaneously record multiple physiological signals. He combined measurements of blood pressure, pulse, and respiration onto a single moving strip of paper. He called his invention the cardio-pneumopsychograph, a name that beautifully captures its purpose: to chart the interplay between the heart, the lungs, and the mind. Larson's work was then refined and popularized by his associate Leonard Keeler. Keeler was not only an inventor but also a brilliant showman. He made crucial modifications to Larson's design, adding a component to measure galvanic skin response, the electrical conductivity of the skin which changes with moisture. This new, more compact and portable machine, which he patented in 1931 as the Keeler polygraph, and became the prototype for the instrument used for decades. The science behind the machine is built upon a simple yet powerful premise. The act of deception is stressful. When a person tells a lie they know to be a lie, particularly in a high-stakes situation, their body often enters a state of fight or flight. The theory is that the fear of being caught triggers a cascade of physiological changes. The heart may beat faster, breathing can become shallow or erratic, and the sweat glands may activate. The polygraph machine does not detect lies themselves. Rather, it is designed to detect the physiological turmoil that lying is presumed to cause. The polygraph, at its core, is a sensitive listener. It does not hear words, but rather listens to the silent language of the body, translating it into a visual story written in ink on a moving chart. It focuses on three primary channels of communication flowing from our autonomic nervous system, the part of our body that operates without conscious thought. The first of these channels is the cardiovascular system. A blood pressure cuff, much like the one you would find in a doctor's surgery, is wrapped around the subject's arm. This cuff measures changes in blood pressure and heart rate. A lie, the theory holds, can cause a sudden spike in blood pressure or a quickening of the pulse as the body reacts to the stress of deception. The second channel the machine monitors is our breathing or respiration. Two flexible, corrugated tubes called pneumographs are fastened around the subject's chest and abdomen. These tubes expand and contract with every breath, sending signals to the machine's recording pens. An examiner looks for subtle shifts in the breathing pattern. A person might unconsciously hold their breath when a difficult question is asked, or their breathing might become shallow and rapid. The third, and perhaps most subtle channel, is the galvanic skin response, or electrodermal activity. Two small metal plates, called galvanometers, are attached to the fingertips. These sensors measure the skin's electrical conductivity. Our skin is always producing a tiny, almost imperceptible amount of sweat. When we are under stress or feel fear, our sweat glands become more active. Since sweat contains salt, it increases the skin's ability to conduct electricity. These three signals, heart, breath, and sweat, are recorded simultaneously by separate pens onto a moving strip of paper or, in modern systems, onto a computer screen. The result is a complex tapestry of physiological data. It is important to remember that the machine itself is simply a recording device. It does not flash a light or sound a siren to announce a lie. It merely presents the biological data. The true challenge and the source of all the controversy lies in the human interpretation of these jagged lines. A modern polygraph examination is a highly structured and methodical process, far removed from the spontaneous interrogations often depicted in cinema. It is a carefully choreographed performance designed to isolate and measure a subject's reactions. The process typically begins long before any questions are asked, with a lengthy pre-test interview. During this phase, the examiner builds a rapport with the subject, explains how the equipment works, and goes over every question that will be asked during the actual test. This is a crucial step. By revealing the questions beforehand, the examiner aims to reduce the anxiety of the truthful person, who now knows what to expect, while heightening the anxiety of the deceptive person, who must now anticipate lying to those specific questions. Once the pre-test interview is complete, the subject is connected to the polygraph instrument. The blood pressure cuff is inflated, the pneumograph tubes are secured, and the galvanometers are attached to the fingers. The examiner then conducts a short acquaintance test to calibrate the machine to the individual's unique physiological responses. The subject may be asked to deliberately lie to simple questions such as, "Is your name John?" when it is actually David. The formal test then begins with the examiner asking a series of questions in a calm, even tone. The questions are a mixture of three types. There are irrelevant questions such as, "Is today Thursday?" which are neutral and used to establish a baseline. Then there are control questions, which are deliberately broad and designed to provoke a mild emotional response, such as, "Have you ever told a lie to get out of trouble?" Finally, there are the relevant questions, which pertain directly to the matter under investigation. The core theory of the test relies on comparing the physiological reactions to the control questions against the reactions to the relevant questions. The examiner will typically run through the list of questions several times to ensure the consistency of the responses. After the data is collected, the post-test phase begins. If the charts show significant reactions to the relevant questions, the examiner may confront the subject with these results in an attempt to elicit a confession. The final result of a polygraph test is not lie or truth. Instead, the examiner provides an opinion: deception indicated, no deception indicated, or inconclusive. The entire procedure, from start to finish, is a psychological theatre, where the machine is both a prop and a key actor, and the final script is written from the body's involuntary reactions. Despite its technological appearance, the polygraph is far from an infallible machine. Its very foundation is built on assumptions about human psychology and physiology, and this is where the deep controversies begin. The most significant criticism is the question of accuracy. Proponents claim accuracy rates upwards of 90%. However, independent scientific research paints a much more doubtful picture. Organizations like the National Academy of Sciences have conducted extensive reviews concluding that polygraph accuracy is little better than chance. The fundamental problem is that there is no single unique physiological response to lying. The machine measures arousal, not deception. An honest but nervous person might show a stronger reaction simply because they are afraid of being disbelieved. This leads to two types of errors that plague the polygraph: false positives, where truthful people are flagged as deceptive, and false negatives, where deceptive people pass as truthful. Furthermore, the outcome depends heavily on the examiner's skill, experience, and potential bias. An examiner who believes the subject is guilty may unconsciously influence the test or interpret results to confirm their beliefs. The existence of countermeasures adds another layer of doubt. These are deliberate techniques to try and beat the test. For example, a subject might bite their tongue, contract their toe muscles, or perform mental arithmetic during control questions. This makes their response to relevant questions appear less significant. The history of the polygraph is intertwined with some of the most famous and intriguing criminal cases of the past century, serving as both a celebrated tool and a source of profound failure. One of the most notorious examples is the case of Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, who was responsible for the murders of dozens of women in Washington state during the 1980s and 90s. In 1984, Ridgway was a prime suspect and agreed to take a polygraph test. The examiner concluded that he had passed the test. This result diverted suspicion away from him for years, allowing him to continue his horrific crimes. It was not until 2001 that DNA evidence definitively linked him to the murders. Ridgway's case stands as a chilling reminder of the polygraph's potential for catastrophic false negatives. In stark contrast is the story of Aldrich Ames, a CIA officer who became a mole for the Soviet Union. Throughout his career of espionage, Ames was subjected to routine polygraph examinations by the CIA. In both 1986 and 1991, he underwent polygraph tests while actively spying for the Russians. During the tests, his examiners noted signs of deception, but his explanations were deemed plausible, and the concerns were ultimately dismissed by his superiors. It was only through painstaking traditional detective work that he was finally caught in 1994. The Ames case highlights a critical weakness. Even when the machine indicates deception, human interpretation and institutional biases can lead to the wrong conclusions. The machine has also played a role in cases of wrongful conviction. In the 1980s, Floyd Buzz Fay was convicted of murder in Ohio, partly because he failed a polygraph test. He spent years in prison proclaiming his innocence. Later, the true perpetrator confessed to the crime, and Fay was exonerated. His case illustrates the devastating human cost of a false positive, where a truthful person's anxiety and fear under questioning can be misinterpreted as guilt. The polygraph has also been credited with helping to solve crimes, often by inducing confessions. Sometimes the mere belief in the machine's power is enough to make a guilty person confess. In these instances, the polygraph functions not as a scientific instrument for detecting lies, but as a psychological prop and a powerful tool of interrogation. The legal standing of the polygraph is as complex and contentious as the science behind it. In the United States, the relationship between the courtroom and the polygraph examiner has been fraught with skepticism for almost a century. The landmark 1923 case, Fry versus United States, set the original precedent. In this case, the court rejected the use of an early lie detector test, establishing the general acceptance standard, which stated that scientific evidence is only admissible if it is generally accepted as reliable by the relevant scientific community. While the Fry standard has been replaced in federal courts and many states by the more flexible Daubert standard, which focuses on scientific methodology and testing, polygraph results remain inadmissible in most jurisdictions. Courts continue to view the polygraph with deep suspicion, citing concerns about its reliability, the lack of standardized procedures, and the undue influence its seemingly scientific results might have on a jury. However, the polygraph is still widely used in other areas of the legal and governmental systems outside the courtroom. Law enforcement agencies frequently use it as an investigative tool to screen suspects, narrow down a pool of persons of interest, or pressure a suspect into a confession. Many federal agencies, including the FBI and CIA, use polygraph screening as a condition of employment and for periodic security clearance reviews. This creates a strange paradox where the same device, deemed too unreliable for court, is considered useful for critical national security decisions. The Employee Polygraph Protection Act of 1988 severely restricts the use of polygraphs by most private employers, acknowledging the instrument's potential for abuse and inaccuracy in a commercial setting. Yet exceptions for government agencies and certain security-sensitive industries persist. This raises questions of fairness and justice. Is it right to deny someone a job or to focus a criminal investigation on them based on the readings of a machine whose scientific validity is so fiercely debated? The enduring quest for a perfect lie detector has not ended with the polygraph. As our understanding of the human body and mind deepens, and as our technology grows ever more powerful, new and potentially more accurate methods of deception detection are emerging on the horizon. Scientists are now looking beyond the simple physiological signs of arousal and are attempting to peer directly into the brain itself. One of the most promising areas of research involves functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI. This technology measures brain activity by tracking changes in blood flow. Another fascinating avenue of exploration is the use of electroencephalography, or EEG, which measures the brain's electrical activity through sensors placed on the scalp. Certain brain waves, such as the P300 wave, show a specific response when a person recognizes a familiar piece of information. In a forensic context, a suspect could be shown images or details that only the true culprit would know. A spike in P300 activity upon seeing a critical piece of evidence could indicate guilty knowledge, even if the person denies any recognition. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are also being brought to bear on the problem. Researchers are developing complex algorithms that can analyze a vast array of cues far beyond what a human examiner could process. These AI systems can analyze not only the classic polygraph signals, but also a person's vocal pitch, their rate of speech, the words they choose, and even micro-expressions, fleeting facial movements that last for only a fraction of a second. By analyzing thousands of data points simultaneously, these systems hope to identify more reliable patterns of deception, free from the subjective bias of a human operator. Of course, these new technologies bring with them a host of new ethical and practical challenges. Brain scans are incredibly expensive, and their interpretation is still a matter of intense scientific debate. Can a person learn to control their brain activity just as they might try to control their breathing? And what are the privacy implications of technologies that can analyze our every word and facial twitch for signs of falsehood? The frontier of lie detection is moving from the body to the brain and from human interpretation to algorithmic analysis. The tools are changing, but the fundamental questions of accuracy, ethics, and justice remain as pressing as ever. Our long journey from their handful of dry rice in ancient China to the glowing images of a modern brain scan reveals a deep and persistent human desire, the desire for certainty in a world of ambiguity. We yearn for a simple, reliable way to distinguish truth from falsehood. The polygraph machine, with its scientific aura and dramatic presentation, seemed to promise just that. It offered a mechanical solution to a profoundly human problem. For a time, it captured our collective imagination as a true lie detector, a machine that could look past our words and into our very souls to see if we were being honest. Yet, as we have seen, the reality is far more complex. The polygraph does not detect lies, it detects physiological arousal. And arousal can stem from many sources: fear, surprise, anger, and anxiety, as well as the stress of deception. The lines it draws are not a direct transcription of truth, but rather a biological story that requires careful and fallible human interpretation. Its history is littered with as many failures as successes, with wrongful accusations and missed culprits standing as stark warnings against placing blind faith in its pronouncements. The machine is a tool, and like any tool, its usefulness is limited by its inherent design and the skill of the person wielding it. The ongoing debate about the polygraph forces us to confront difficult questions about the nature of science and justice. Science demands rigorous testing, repeatability, and a clear understanding of cause and effect, standards that the polygraph has struggled to meet to the satisfaction of the broader scientific community. Justice demands fairness, reliability, and the protection of the innocent, principles that are jeopardized by a technique with a significant and unpredictable error rate. The intersection of these two great domains is a place of friction and caution, reminding us that what is useful in one context, such as an investigation, may be too dangerous in another, such as a court of law. Ultimately, the story of the polygraph is a lesson in critical thinking. It teaches us to question claims of certainty, to look closely at the evidence, and to be wary of simple answers to complex problems. The search for truth is not a mechanical process, it is a human one. It relies on careful investigation, on the weighing of evidence, on listening, and on understanding the complexities of human motivation and behavior. As technology continues to evolve, offering us ever more sophisticated tools, we must carry this lesson forward. We must remain vigilant, thoughtful, and ever watchful in our enduring and essential search for truth.